Okay, the last thing I want to talk about on this episode, if you're somebody who's easily grossed out by body fluid type stuff, I don't recommend you listen to this portion of the episode. But if you're somebody who is interested in the human body and you're not grossed out by that sort of thing, I recommend you stick around for this. So the next section is going to be about IBS. Before I get into this section, I just want to say I'm not a doctor. I'm just sharing my experience of what I've been learning. So don't rely on me for like medical information. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a crazy obsessed person who does a lot of research, and I want to share my experience and what I've learned with you. But if you're having any health issues, make sure you have a medical professional to help you with those. So for those who don't know what IBS is, it's called irritable bowel syndrome. Indigestion, constipation, diarrhea. For somebody to be diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, they would have to have these issues chronically for several weeks, several months in order to be diagnosed with something like this. It's normal to have a bad day. It's normal to have a stomach ache here and there if you eat too much food or something like that. That's pretty normal for everybody. But for people with IBS, they have these issues chronically. They can't solve the problem. They can't figure it out. Their gut is all messed up and they don't know how to fix it. There could also be a lot of different issues that could cause that as well. IBS is a common one, but there's also specific things that, again, if you are having issues in this area, you do want to see a medical professional or get a colonoscopy, because there's other things that could be happening. Like there could be colon cancer. There could actually be a dysfunction of certain organs in your body that could actually cause IBS symptoms. Like you could have liver issues or kidney issues, gallstones. Like there's so many things that could be going on. So again, if you suffer with any of these types of issues, you definitely want to get checked by a doctor to rule out all possibilities. But if you're somebody who doesn't have anything more serious going on, or if you're just having these issues and you're waiting for a doctor's appointment and you want to do something to mitigate those symptoms while you're waiting for your doctor's appointment, this is for you. So just to explain what's been going on with me, I have always struggled with digestive issues. And I think a lot of it, now that I reflect back on my history, I think a lot of it was that I just wasn't taking care of myself as much as I thought I was. I've always prided myself on being healthy in the sense that I do work out regularly. I have for a long time. I am very good with eating fresh quality ingredients. That's something like I'm a killer at. Like I'm an ingredient snob. Like I'm really careful about what sort of ingredients I have in my food. But that doesn't necessarily, and by the way, before I get into the next part, what I mean by that is I'm really good at like making sure I get whole food ingredients. Like if I'm going to eat ice cream, I don't eat the one with the fructose. I eat the one with the natural sugar. If I'm going to have pizza, I don't eat frozen pizza or Pizza Hut. I make sure it's like fresh baked pizza, that sort of stuff. I've always been great with that. Embarrassed to say I haven't always been great with other things as far as portioning my food, overconsumption of coffee, that sort of thing. So while I'm a health nerd and a health nut, there had been a lot of things in the past that I was doing that I think were damaging my system. One was drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. No water in my system, no food in my system, just first thing in the morning, coffee, and lots of coffee, by the way, not just one cup, like sometimes a half a pot, even more of coffee per day, empty stomach, no water, nothing. So that was something really damaging I was doing to my system. Another thing I was doing to my system was not hydrating. So again, I would start my day off with an enormous amount of coffee, and then to follow up, I wouldn't hydrate. Dairy, I'm super addicted to dairy. So I mean, I could eat like an entire block of cheese in one sitting, which is an embarrassing thing to say. And again, I was always mindful of picking the healthiest cheese at the grocery store, but even with that, it's not healthy to eat a block of cheese. I mean, that's going to cause constipation. There's no, that's just obvious. Some other bad habits I've had, just portions. I eat huge portions at once and I can't stop myself. I definitely have some type of addiction issue with food now that I think about it. Because again, the coffee, I need to drink coffee constantly. The portions, like the blocks of cheese at a time. There were just so many things I was doing to my body over the years that's well, duh, you're going to have issues. But back to where I'm at now with it. in the past, I would sort of have flare-ups and then they would resolve. So while it was a problem, it was never really much of a problem that it would scare me in a sense. It was kind of just like, well, yeah, I'm mistreating my body with these things. Duh, I'm having issues. Let me just like fix it this week. And then I would kind of like go up and down with my habits there. But never scared me, never made me nervous or anything like that. It wasn't until really the past couple months that I genuinely started to feel nervous about my digestive system and what's been going on, because I started to notice different symptoms that I had never experienced before. And quite honestly, it really scared me. Like I'm not the hypochondriac type at all. Like I said, I had these issues before and I just kind of like brushed it off. But some of the symptoms I had recently, I was like, okay, something really wrong. There's something really wrong with my digestive system. Again, I don't want to give TMI to people. So if you're grossed out, don't listen to this. But if you're here because you want to learn more about this, I will share some of those symptoms with you. Again, constipation and diarrhea, like back and forth different days of the week. Like I would have chronically, like keep in mind in the past, I would have these problems like once a week, but on a consistent basis once a week, but I would have normal days. I'm talking like I've been having these types of issues for the past like 3 months at the least. And so I knew something was wrong, like really, really wrong, but I still was kind of addicted to my habits with coffee and with cheese and whatnot, that I wasn't really willing to admit something was wrong quite yet. And that's where things started turning the past month or the past few weeks even, where I was like, my body is telling me I need to change this or this could get really ugly. And quite honestly, like I said, really scared me. The first thing I noticed was that I would start feeling nausea by looking at certain foods, which is something that I've never experienced in my entire life. Like I said, I'm like an addictive eater. I love food. I could eat large quantities. So this is weird for me, but I mean, to the point where I actually thought I was pregnant, and I'm not pregnant because like it's not, I've been out of a relationship for 2 months and I've had my cycle several times already. So it's not even possible for me to be pregnant. But what I'm saying is like, there was like some type of intuition around food that reminded me of something you would hear about a pregnant woman. Like they start craving certain things or whatever, or like being grossed out by certain things. I started looking at certain foods and feeling like intuitively like I would vomit if I ate them before I even ate them. And they were foods that I would normally love. Tomato sauce, I would see tomato sauce and just the sight of tomato sauce would give me nausea. So there was something my body was trying to tell me by that. Weirdly enough, avocados, recently I started feeling nauseous looking at avocados. So that I don't get, because avocados are supposed to be like a superfood. So I think my body was trying to tell me something like, I know avocados are high in fat, so maybe my body was like intuitively trying to tell me that I'm not processing fats correctly because of my digestive tract, that I need to maybe like calm down on the fats for a little bit. But again, really bizarre, because avocados are something that I love. I love avocados. So for me to feel like repulsed at the sight of them is bizarre. That's when I knew something was really wrong. And there was other foods like just cheese. And again, like going back to what I was saying before, I have a habit of eating blocks of cheese and I love it. I'm addicted to it. But all of a sudden I would look at specifically certain kinds of cheeses, sliced cheeses, which are probably more processed, but like slices of Swiss cheese, slices of cheddar cheese, I would look at it and I would almost feel like I was going to vomit just staring at the food. So that was the first symptom I noticed, was where things really started to get worse, besides the chronic IBS issues of not being regular for a while, were just weird intuitions about food. And then this is, again, like if you're grossed out, don't listen to this, fast forward. But this is where really I started getting scared, was food started to come out of my body completely undigested. And I know that's normal from time to time, where like, you know, you could look down after going to the bathroom and see like chunks of food. But I mean, like on a pretty regular basis, some foods were coming out of me that looked like they weren't eaten at all. They were like food in their raw form. So this really started freaking me out. I was like, all right, I've done some sort of damage to my system. Like something's really wrong here. And the scary thing is like, to see a specialist, a GI doctor, I made an appointment and it takes 3 to 4 months to even see a specialist. So that's really scary too, is like, what if there was something like, what if I had colon cancer or something right now? I wouldn't know for another 3 months. And that's terrifying. I mean, I suppose you could always go to the hospital if things get really serious, but yeah, I told one of my friends about that. I was like, yeah, I made an appointment with a GI doctor and literally it's going to take me 4 months to even get my first appointment. And she's like, yeah, she's like, that's the world we live in today. And it's really sad and it's really scary. So once I realized that, okay, there's something serious going wrong with me and I'm not going to be able to get professional help for a while, I'm going to have to figure out how to manage these symptoms on my own for a while. And that's why I'm creating this video and sharing this in case there's anybody out there who's having the same issue. So I started doing a lot of research. And also, before I get into some of the research I found, I do want to say this. A lot of people will criticize YouTubers for talking about this stuff. And they'll say like, you're not a doctor, you need to talk to a doctor, or like, first of all, I can't get a doctor, like I just said. But second of all, there actually is an incredible amount of information out there now that is credible. Incredible amount of credible. There are doctors who have YouTube channels now. Credible sources. There are scientific articles. So yes, we live in the information era, and it's a blessing and a curse. The curse is that you can get bullshit information, but the blessing is you can actually get doctors that if you had to actually see them in person would cost you a lot of money. It would be like a year waiting list. And now you can actually get that information directly from those doctors from their YouTube channel. So I actually think that that's not entirely true. If you know what you're doing and you research the correct sources, you will get good information. So again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to give you secondhand information from trusted sources that I looked up. So I don't recommend you take my words as like your prescription, but I do recommend you consider some of the things I'm talking about and then do your own research furthermore with credible sources before you listen to any of my ideas. I'm just throwing the ideas out there, but then follow up with your own research with credible sources. But anyways, as I've been figuring out how to manage these issues by myself while I'm waiting for professional help, I've been looking up, good doctors. Andrew Huberman is a great one. There's a woman called Mel Robbins. She's not a doctor herself. She's a podcaster, like an inspirational speaker, but she had just recently interviewed a doctor who did a whole series on gut health. So that was a really good source for me because that doctor was qualified to talk about it. And I learned a lot about health. And I've just been reading a lot of scientific journals and whatnot, scientific articles online. And what I'm learning is that there's a couple remedies that you could use to deal with this type of situation. And I've been sort of playing around with a combination of both. One is fermented foods, because long story short, I don't want to get into the science of it because I can't explain it as gracefully as some of those doctors that I had mentioned. But there's a lot of research out there about the gut microbiome and the connection between the brain and the gut and how much they're so intertwined, and how your gut health is such an important foundation of your overall health and your overall well-being. That's why I said in the beginning, like, I know this stuff is gross to talk about, but it's important as an adult to not be grossed out by this type of stuff, because your bathroom habits are a sign of health. Like, so if you're going to the bathroom regularly and it's a healthy way, you know what I mean? Like, everything looks good, everything comes out good, everything comes out clean, like it's not messy. You shouldn't be afraid to like think about that type of stuff or grossed out to think about that type of stuff, because that's actually a major indication of good health. So that's why I think this stuff is so important if you're having these type of issues to get into. But anyways, there's just so much information out there about the connection between the brain and the gut and your gut health and your gut microbiome. That's a lot of the research I've been doing. So I highly recommend you do some of your own research there. But I'm going to share with you the two methods I've been trying out to help me. One is implementing fermented foods. Fermented foods are known to help people with these issues reset their gut microbiome. You can have fermented foods in different forms. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha is another one. There's a lot of different, I think probiotic yogurts are technically fermented. So Greek yogurt without any added sugars or anything like that. Kefir, stuff like that. So again, the reason why I'm bringing up the two different methods is because you need to know your own body and figure out how your own body works, because for one person, fermented foods might be the cure, but for another person who has specific food allergies, fermented foods might actually make things way worse. So the other thing I've been playing around with is called the FODMAP diet, FODMAP, Low FODMAP Diet. Basically, each letter of that stands for a chemical compound in a food. I'm not going to break down each individual chemical compound because I don't feel qualified to do so. So again, do your research if you want to know what each one of those letters stands for, FODMAP, figure that out. But it's basically, the diet puts you on foods that are easier to digest as a way to, it's an elimination diet where you're only eating these foods that are known to be easier and to cause less inflammation on the digestive system. And then the idea isn't necessarily to have a restrictive diet for the rest of your life, but the idea is to then later on, after a month or two of being on this diet, to then slowly introduce one food at a time to figure out what the culprit is. So maybe one of these days I'll do what I eat in a day on this diet video so you can actually see my planned meals, but I'm just going to verbally talk about what some of these foods are. Interestingly enough, avocados were one of the things I had to cut out. So I thought that was interesting that my body was telling me naturally not to eat avocados, which is so healthy for you. But the FODMAP diet actually wants you to cut out avocados from the diet. So what I like about this diet so far is that it's not very restrictive in terms of food groups. You can eat pretty much any food group. Even there are some dairies that are tolerable on the food group. I believe butter is okay on this list, or any cheeses that are known to have low lactose, because I don't think it's dairy that they're getting rid of on this diet. It's just dairy that's known to be high in lactose. There are some dairies out there that have very low lactose. There are some dairies out there that actually do have very low lactose, and I believe Parmesan might be one of those. I think hard cheeses tend to be a little more lower on lactose content. So anyways, there's minimal dairy you can have on it. You can have carbs, you can have fats, you can have proteins, you can have literally every food group, but you just have to be really, really careful about which ones you're consuming. So I'll just walk you through what I had today, for example. First thing I had in the morning when I woke up was rice cakes. I had just plain brown rice cakes. There's no oil or anything in it. They're organic rice cakes with just brown rice and a little salt. And then I had sliced bananas on top of that. Totally approved on this diet. Later for lunch, I had buckwheat. You can have buckwheat on this diet. Certain wheats and carbs you can have on it. But I made buckwheat and I put ground turkey, lean turkey, because they recommend you have meats that are more lean and lower in fat on this diet. And I put some vegetables on top of it, but ones that are easier on the digestive system. Spinach is one of them. You can have most leafy greens. Apparently cooked vegetables are easier to digest. So that's what I had for lunch. I had the buckwheat, a little bit of spinach on it, and the ground turkey, just a small portion of the turkey. And then later for dinner, I didn't eat my dinner yet today, but I'm going to have some lean steak, like some sirloin, like low fat steak. And I might have some sweet potato on the side, and then again, some type of green vegetable. So it's a very healthy diet in terms of your digestion. You're eating things that are very easy to digest. Again, the idea isn't that you're going to be stuck on this diet for the rest of your life. The idea is to reset your gut so that you can figure out what's wrong, and then you can slowly introduce the other foods back, because everybody's different. Everybody's body is completely different. You might find later that you introduced the dairy and that you didn't have a problem with it at all. You might find that you introduce the dairy and you can tolerate a little bit of dairy, or certain dairies. You might find that, hey, I can tolerate this hard cheese, but I can't tolerate the mozzarella cheese. Like, everybody's body's so different. Again, with the meats, you might introduce high fat meats and you might find, this is interesting. I can eat chicken with like skin on it, but I can't have burger meat. So it's really more like figuring out your own body and an elimination process for your body. So you're starting from a really healthy ground. And again, you have to be careful, because this is self-experimentation. So that the FODMAP diet might not even be a solution for people who have even further allergies. Because like if there's something serious going on, really serious, you might have trouble breaking down all fats. Like, so you might not be able to eat fat at all. Like there's so many things that could go on. So again, remember that this really, I'm not saying to do this from a place of like, I'm a doctor prescribing you. I'm saying do this from a place of, if you're in a situation like me, where you're stuck in a situation where you can't get help from a professional for 4 months and you have to mitigate things on your own. So that's where I'm at with it. And, you know, I recommend trying this out if you're in a situation like that. But again, listening to your body, because everybody's body's so completely different. You know, what's an irritant for one person might not cause inflammation for the other person. So one thing I will say for me is that I was doing so many damaging things to my body that I have no idea what's causing all this inflammation in my gut. So when I do come back and reintroduce some of these habits to figure out what the problem is, for me, the potential problem is 1, drinking too much coffee on an empty stomach and drinking just too much coffee, period. 2, antidepressants. I'm actually wondering if some of my symptoms are being caused as a side effect of my antidepressants. I'm not going off my antidepressants. I've tried that in the past and it was a disaster. I do need them, but I'm actually going to go on a lower dose. I have been fine on a lower dose before, so I'm in a good place mentally right now. So I'm actually going to lower the dose of my medication to see if that helps the symptoms. Dairy. It could be dairy that's bothering me. It could be gluten that's bothering me. I'm not having gluten right now on this FODMAP diet, by the way. I think you don't have to cut out gluten in the low FODMAP diet, but to me it makes sense to try it because gluten is a known irritant for people and known to cause inflammation. So to me it makes perfect sense to like test it out and see if gluten is one of the things that is bothering you. What else? It could be the gluten, it could be the dairy, added sugars. It could be that, because I have been more comfortable eating like donuts and that type of thing lately. So I could find out later that I'm okay with gluten, but I'm just not okay with it when you have all that added sugar. Honey, I've been eating a lot of honey lately, and that could be an irritant because it's high in sugar. It's natural sugar, and I've always been good about that, but it's still high in sugar, period. And maybe I just can't tolerate it. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm in a trial process of figuring that out. And I'm using a combination of the FODMAP diet and fermented foods. That might not work for everybody because fermented foods could actually be an irritant for some people, but I'm trying out both. I do want to give my feedback so far about how this diet has been working for me. The low FODMAP diet paired with low doses of fermented foods. It's too soon to really tell how this is going to help me in the long run. And I'm still waiting for my doctor's appointment to rule out any other serious complications like colon cancer or whatnot. But I do want to say in the 4 days now that I've tried it, I have noticed an enormous improvement, like insane. So I will say that it is working so far. It's too soon to tell. I don't want to like jinx myself and be like, man, I had a lucky day, but I go back to other ways. So I don't want to jinx myself too soon, but the first day or two, I didn't feel much of an improvement, which was really discouraging. But then I did some further research and I found out that digestion can actually take 72 hours to process for some people. So even though I was eating all these like easily digestible foods now, your body could still be working out foods from like 2 days ago. So if you are going to try this diet, give it a few days because your body could still be working out foods that were causing you inflammation. So first 2 days, I didn't feel much of a difference. By the third day, I felt an enormous difference, which was really encouraging and really inspiring to see. Also, to add on to that, I want to say this too. I was really bummed out at first when I found out I had to try this diet out because I had a bad history of issues with eating where I had an eating disorder and I was afraid to eat certain foods, and I was eating mostly healthy foods at one point in my time, but not out of a desire to be healthy, out of a desire to be thin. So it took me years to recover out of that mindset. And I feel like I finally got to a place where I can eat whatever I want guilt-free and not feel anything. And it took me so long to get here. And I was so excited. I was like, I can have a donut. I can have a slice of pizza. and all that, and enjoy it and just enjoy life and be happy with that. I finally got there, and now my body's like, no, you can't do that. So I'm really pissed off and quite honestly devastated about that. But at the same time, I'm also like hopeful and inspired because now I'm being forced to eat healthy, not out of like anxiety or fear of gaining weight, but I'm being forced to eat for my health out of necessity. So being forced to eat healthy out of necessity to improve my stomach issues. So in one sense, I'm kind of pissed off and like sad that I don't get to enjoy all the foods that I thought I would. But on the other hand, I'm also inspired because it's like, maybe this is like a blessing in disguise of some kind where I'm actually at a healthy place mentally with food, where eating healthy isn't eating disorderly. It's actually for my genuine health. So maybe at the end of this, I'm going to resolve a lot of problems that I have otherwise, like, you know, body tensions and mental issues. Like maybe if I reset my gut, because again, we were talking about how the gut and the brain is so connected, maybe this will actually help my mind tremendously. So while I'm really bummed out in the moment, I'm also thinking that this could be some sort of blessing in disguise. And it's too soon to tell. I need to get a professional to look at me and rule out any other possibilities. And I need to be on the diet for longer than a week to really say if this is going to work long term. But again, first 2 days didn't feel much of a difference at all. Third day, I felt incredible. Like everything functioned well in the bathroom, which was incredibly like inspiring. Like it makes me feel like, okay, maybe I don't have some sort of serious condition. Maybe this is solvable. And, you know, I'm sure I don't have to cut out junk food for the rest of my life. Like I'm sure I could enjoy a slice of pizza, but maybe I'll have to do it in more moderation and be more mindful to only include smaller portions of those things in my life. I won't know that until again, you're supposed to experiment with the FODMAP diet for like a month or two. Like they say 4 to 6 weeks. So I just say a month or two. So I think you need to be on the diet for a month or two and then go through the elimination process and the reintroduction process to really figure out what is causing the issues. And by then everybody's different. Like some people will be able to add in and tolerate more than other people. So we'll get there when we get there. But in the meantime, I'm really excited to embark this journey of like getting to the root cause of my stomach issues that quite frankly, I should have been working on this a long time ago, but I let it get to a point where it's gotten this severe where it's like, I'm being like pushed in a corner and forced to fix it. Like I said, my body was doing weird things, like just feeling grossed out and repulsed by the sight of certain foods. So definitely something intuitive was going on where it was like, you better fix this or you're going to cause a much bigger issue that could kill you. Like that's kind of what my body was telling me, you know? So, you know, scary stuff, but also inspiring stuff because it is forcing me to problem solve. Like it's kind of the theme of this episode when we go back to the jiu-jitsu stuff and problem solve. It's forcing me to think about long-term sustainability of diet and not like short-term solutions. So inspiring, nerve-wracking, but also very inspiring at the same time for me to do this.